Well, hi everyone. We're back at the Urban Farmer Project. Nicholas Steen and
Adrian Rimmer.
And welcome to Pop-Up COP Day 9. Today we have Axel Mikalova with us from Perspectives and Duncan Reid from Reset Connect. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for giving us your time. Adrian, you're going to do some interviews with Axel. So thank you, Axel.
Yes, thanks very much, Axel. And I mean, we've known you really well. We know the sort of role you're playing at COP. But for those who are less familiar with you and your company, maybe you could start with just giving an overview of your background and what Perspectives is doing.
Yeah, well, I have actually followed this UNFCCC climate change negotiation process right from this beginning. I was accredited at the first COP. I've participated in 28 of the 30 COPs that have been taking place. And I've been supporting governments, private sector entities, and NGOs on navigating the maze of the COPs. COP presidencies, for example, in Doha and Qatar in 2012, in Mexico, Cancun 2010, and in Glasgow we supported 5 different country delegations. Of course, we had firewalls between them, so I've been a kind of, not a dinosaur, but survivor of 30 years of process. And I must say that I'm really thrilled to see how this COP is developing, because many people were very negative. Oh, we go to Belém, a nondescript city in the Amazon rainforest. It has open sewers, it has no hotels, nothing. But now, after the first week of the COP, I must say I've rarely seen such a welcoming host city of the COP. And in terms of atmosphere, it is the second best COP after Bali in 27. So the host city is just enthusiastic about hosting such a big event. Everybody is exceedingly helpful. We have a green zone. So for those who don't go to COPs frequently, the green zones are the zones where the general population can participate without having any accreditation. And this green zone is packed with people. And they have really nice events there and engaging with the population in a beautiful way.
That's really great. And you were also saying, Axel, that in terms of process, you're seeing some improvements this year versus other COPs in terms of the pace that the presidency is working at.
Yeah, so we, for the first time in many years, have a democracy as a COP presidency. And I must say, democracies are better in organizing many stakeholders and good diplomacy than autocracies. So Brazilian government has really put a strong effort in ensuring high-level engagement. They were doing it nicely to have the heads of state already in the run-up to the COP, so not losing valuable time during the COP for heads of state stuff. They were hitting the ground beautifully. Usually, for those who know COPs, there is always what is called the agenda fight. So various country groups put up new topics, but of course these agendas of the COPs are set many years in advance. So if you would now open for 10 new topics, it would be completely unmanageable. So it's kind of ritual that you fight out these discussions about what should be the agenda, but often you lose 1 or even 2 days. And this time there was no loss of time. As 10 o'clock morning, Monday last week, the COP could start, and the presidency very beautifully isolated these new agenda proposals in a specific stream of discussion. And they now, over the past 2 days and nights, have rolled out a series of negotiation texts that are very far developed, with a lot of detailed specific options that the ministers can now trade. So as you know, a COP is a big circus and trading ground where you have as many horses or animals in your fold and try to trade them against each other. But that can only be done if you know what you're trading. You can't trade something that is hidden in a bag. You don't want to buy the cat in the bag, right? So this time, I would say we are 3 days in advance in the kind of documentation that we have for the negotiation. So for the first time, in history of the COPs after, I would say, Kyoto, we may be seeing a COP that could end on time. They are adamant that they want to achieve it.
There's always the debate.
So I was going to say that we have a tight schedule, and these are wonderful, and you're painting the picture, but I'm also keen that you get over the comments that you want to talk about.
Yeah, so I mean, you just talk for us. What are the kind of key tracks of the negotiations that you're following from a personal perspective, but also on behalf of your clients?
Well, the critical aspect, of course, is the adaptation. The global goal for adaptation shall be operationalized with a set of 100 indicators. And that is the only item that has a formal deadline for this COP. And it has been very contentious. So now there is a package of discussions on 3 pillars. One is these indicators. The second is the volume funding for adaptation. And the third is the process about implementing institutions that then can actually mobilize the adaptation. So there is a big debate.
Sorry, when you say indicators, could you just expand that a little bit? What do you mean?
So there are 7 thematic goals for adaptation: health, poverty, cultural heritage as an example. And then there are 4 process-related goals that relate to early warning, that then the policy design, implementation. And for each of these streams, 8, 9 indicators are to be set to make up the total of 100. And the problem, of course, is for many of these indicators, there are no data. So many countries now fear they will be saddled with huge costs and requirements to collect these data. So developing countries say we only want these indicators that already have data available. But these are concentrated in certain of these elements. So the current idea of a compromise would be to have a small set of indicators that could be agreed now, or a pilot phase, and then to have a work program for 2 years in which this would be refined and the full set of indicators would be developed. And given that we now know that in 2 years' time, the COP will be hosted by Ethiopia in Africa, and Africa, of course, is the continent which is most vulnerable, that, of course, would be the perfect frame to then get this finalized.
Wonderful. Wonderful.
Thank you.
And you've also been sort of looking at, and there's a lot of discussion around the role of natural capital, whether it's through this kind of Article 6.4 process, etc. And quite a lot of discussions about potentially debating areas that had been or thought to be resolved. What's the sort of sense of how that's operating?
And again, natural capital is money that's moving towards
nature and forests, etc.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there has been a big conflict on how to treat nature-based solutions in the context of the Article 6.4 mechanism, the Paris Agreement crediting mechanism. And the conflict is essentially about how long do we have to monitor that there is no reversal, no destruction of the carbon stock, and what would constitute a negligible risk of such destruction. Some countries in the Article 6.4 negotiation room actually now took the stance that all the rules that have now been developed over the past 15 months by the supervisory body for the Article 6.4 mechanism are too stringent and don't need to be weakened. Indonesia, for example. It was quite interesting because apparently some Conservation International guy influenced a member of the Indonesian delegation who has never been seen in the Article 6 negotiation room before. And then apparently through the brother of the president, that was my Indonesian position. But Indonesia got a lot of flack, and it's clear that the negotiation text will not include a request to the supervisory body to weaken the rules. So I would think that the lobbying of some of the organizations who want to have lenient rules for nature-based solutions will backfire, because those who now have worked painstakingly to get a good Article 6.4 mechanism don't want to be derailed by this.
Yeah, and I think that's key. Is that the COP process moves through phases where at certain points in time, different topics are agreed, negotiated, and texts agreed, and they're not opened up until further down the line to look at those again. And I believe 6.4, the international crediting mechanism, is really, 2028 is the next time those rules are supposed to be renegotiated or looked at freshly.
Exactly.
And I guess as we sort of move in towards time, from your perspective, just what are your personal hopes or goals for COP30? By the end of the week, if it does run to time, what were the key things that you would hope to have seen take place or be finalized?
Well, that we have an outcome for adaptation, so that the 3 pillars that are laid out actually are filled with life, and that this then unlocks the mitigation conundrum, because we've had this very contentious debates that actually could not be resolved in Baku about how can we close the ambition gap through stronger NDCs, how to interpret the outcome of the global stocktake, how to ensure that the just transition will be taken seriously. All this is very an intricate complex of also animosities between developed and developing countries, one needs to say clearly. So if we now could have an outcome on the 3 pillars of adaptation, then we may also unlock progress in the mitigation. And what the Brazilian presidency just published this morning was a kind of, they call it Mutirão package. So a set of decisions that would belong together and form a whole, even if it goes beyond very specific negotiation streams. And that then would enable to unlock progress on each of the formal negotiation streams.
Wonderful.
That's great. Thank you. So we'll pick that up hopefully in the next couple of days with some of the others. Thank you so much, Axel. Moving quickly to Duncan. Thank you for being patient, Duncan. You are here in the UK. Can you just say a little bit about your connections that you've had with COP and how it's important for your network, Reset Connect? Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Great to hear from you, Axel, and good to hear kind of the optimistic view you have coming out of Brazil. I think a lot of these, Reset Connect, we actually set up coming out of the COP that we had up in Glasgow in 2021. I think there, at the time, it was felt particularly based on where COP was going next, that we had a very good opportunity in the UK to, kind of stamp our mark as the centre of green finance and actually drive a lot of the initiatives that have been happening in the previous COPs actually into action. I think, the kind of the strap line this year that it's about implementation, I think is definitely true. And I think, politically, I think coming into this COP, there was particular worry over the oil lobby being kind of harder than it had ever been before coming into this event. I think. I think I may have cut out. I don't know. Hopefully you've still got me. Yeah, I'm back. I was just saying that I think coming into this event, the kind of the political landscape since Trump came to power has definitely made some of the players, very worried about what might happen for this sector. I think at a corporate level, most of the large kind of 1,000+ employees globally have got very, very strong commitments to kind of climate strategies. And whilst some of the oil lobby will be pushing hard on the Trump government and the Conservatives and reform in the UK, I don't think that is we're not seeing that with companies. I think companies generally are, still very committed to, nature-based projects. They're committed to reducing their emissions, and that's not just in the UK, but globally. A lot of the big American. Yeah, go on, Adrian.
So I think we see that generally in terms of the, companies are aware of the risks and opportunities that they face, and if they're thinking strategically and for the longer term, then they know that these are things that are going to be key issues they have to address in terms of decarbonising their supply chains and also looking at new commercial opportunities associated with the transition. Are you helping convene companies around that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, some of those conversations are definitely still out in the open. Some of them, there's a lot of green hushing that I think we've seen probably over the last 12 to 18 months as companies are, less inclined to talk publicly about some of the activity they're doing. but certainly behind the scenes, companies are very, very committed to this because, you know, in 4 years or 20, you know, even by the midterms in the US, the political landscape could have changed very, very dramatically in the US. So California and New York, obviously, you know, they are very, very committed to renewables. They are, you know, a huge amount of kind of voters in the US. So I think the midterms in the US are going to be very interesting. And I think, you know, I'm hopeful that some of the language that often in, you know, previous COPs where language gets changed from, you know, phasing out to phasing down can continue. And we can actually start to see, you know, real commitment in this space. But you get tipping points, don't you? You know, we're worried about kind of an ecological tipping point happening very soon. But actually, I think that kind of political tipping point is going to come quicker. I think the business lobby is going to ensure that it does happen. And even with kind of, you know, a lot of the investment funds are not using the words ESG anymore in how they build these funds. But the, you know, the pension funds long term are not going to want to have their, you know, their money tied up in assets that become stranded and are bad for the planet. So whilst there's definitely a lot of short term, I think political, you know, kind of political posturing going on, I think that's so. Yeah, very keen to see what you know what results they get, and normally it doesn't finish on time. So if you think Axel, this one's going to finish on time,
speaking of which, we have to finish. We have to finish on time. We have a tight schedule. People are having lunch breaks, hopefully, and jumped in to hear us. Thank you, Axel from Belém. Thank you, Duncan from the UK, and check out both of these people online. We've got all their contacts on the website and on LinkedIn. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you for having me. Goodbye.